Former Crime Intelligence head Richard Mdluli and Mthembeni Mthunzi have been sentenced to 5 years in prison for charges of kidnapping, assault and assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm. The charges emanate from when Mdluli was commander of the Vosloorus police station in 1998. Judge Ratha Mokgoatlheng dismissed Mdluli and Mthunzi's cause for a non-custodial sentence, which they claimed would be more appropriate as they needed to provide for their families and were at risk of contracting COVID-19 in prison. Paul O'Sullivan is a forensic consultant and he joins us now for more reaction. A very good evening to you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So Richard Mdluli and his co-accused evaded a murder charge and now face 5 years in prison. What's your reaction to this outcome?
Well, I think they're lucky to get 5 years. You have to remember Richard Mdluli has cost the taxpayer a serious amount of money, apart from the criminal activity he's been involved in. He's done at home for the best part of 5 or 6 years on full pay. I think he cost the country 10 million rand in taxes. Now, we also have to remember that while Richard Mdluli was sitting at home twiddling his thumbs, he wasn't actually sitting at home twiddling his thumbs. He was engaging himself in elements of state capture. So the sooner he goes to prison and starts his sentence, the better. Sadly, 5 years means he'll only be serving probably somewhere in the region of about 18 months. So not really justice. And as for the argument that he needs to stay at home so he can look after his family, Mr. Richard Mdluli has been looking after his family by giving them all jobs at rank in the police, and some of them are still there. They need to be chased away.
I want to talk about they're saying that they're going to approach the SCA. Do you see any reasonable prospects of success?
No, I think the judge in this matter, remember this matter was heard at the High Court, and the judge in this matter gave them every latitude. I watched the trial carefully. The judge gave them every latitude. If they approach the Supreme Court appeal, they have to have grounds for an appeal. And I think the evidence against them was overwhelming. The judge could have, in fact, found them guilty on other offences too, but what they got is what they got. And I think 5 years was a very light sentence for kidnapping. They should have got a lot more. And remember, they beat the person as well. They didn't just kidnap him, they took him away and gave him a good hiding. And if you have a look at what's been going on, I think it's about 11 years ago when he was arrested, or 10 years ago. Now, a week after he was arrested, he was placed on suspension. He then managed to get back into his job. And a few months later, thanks to freedom under law, an application was launched and he was suspended again. And then he spent the next few years sitting at home twiddling his thumbs. He threatened me with a defamation case. I said, bring it on. He never sued me. In fact, he ended up in prison. A number of people that have threatened me with defamation have ended up in prison. So hopefully it's setting a good standard for the future.
And you've said that not a single one of them is going to get off the hook. You mentioned about 10 people that you've opened a charge of corruption, racketeering charges against, including Richard Mdluli. Where did that end, by the way?
So that's still going on. You see, what you have to remember is that the criminal justice system has, for at least the last decade, been captured. And it's been captured by criminals. And we see that playing itself out on a regular basis. The murder of Charles Kenya, for example, in the Western Cape last week, is a product of a captured criminal justice system. Now, I've got an official notification that they do not intend to prosecute Richard Mdluli and others for the dockets that I opened in 2012. But what they haven't done yet is issue me with the Section 6 certificate, which I've requested. And when I get that certificate, I intend to run with a private prosecution. These people belong in prison. And if they're already in prison when they start their new sentence, so be it. But I do not intend to let a single one of them off the hook.
Is this personal for you, Mr. O'Sullivan? In 2016, you were arrested, a border plane, with your children present. You said that they were traumatized by it. And you've also said all the things that have happened to you emanate from Jackie Celebi. So Is this something that is personal for you that you believe you will see to the end? And with what means? What do you want to ensure that these people, as you mentioned them, go to jail for?
Okay, so if you commit an offence, the victim of that crime is entitled to pursue the matter and obtain justice. The Constitution says that. Now, the Criminal Procedures Act makes it clear that if the state declined to prosecute and the victim of the crime wants to prosecute himself, he's entitled to do so. So, obviously, I believe the wind is now changing direction. The state is slowly but surely becoming uncaptured. So we are going to see a lot more prosecutions coming forward now. I'm not going to jump the gun. I'm going to give the state a good opportunity, and we are talking to the state on a regular basis. In fact, one of the cops involved in dragging me off the plane, I was detained and tortured for 3 days. One of those cops is now on trial for defeating the ends of justice, fraud and corruption. So I'm satisfied that the wheel is turning again, and it's, the wind is blowing in the right direction. South Africans just have to be a little bit more patient. It takes a long time to change the direction of a battleship, and the criminal justice system battleship has been going in the wrong direction for quite a long while.
What do you believe, according to the way you see it, your crime is? I mean, there are those who said part of the problem is you being a forensic consultant, have been involved in investigations officially that you should not have been involved in. Richard Mdluli himself paints himself as someone who's been victimized because he was promoted to crime intelligence boss. So where do you see all of this going? What do you believe?
Okay, well, anybody's free to have their own opinion. The Constitution gives the people the right to freedom of speech. But the reality is a little bit more interesting. I set up a charity called Forensics for Justice. That charity does nothing more than investigate corruption. Specifically, it focuses on corruption within the criminal justice system. If we turn the clock back, and I'm going back now 19 years, 20 years ago, I was a director of the airports company, and my responsibility was safety and security at the airports in South Africa, 10 airports. And Jackie Salebi took it upon himself when I was able to intercept counterfeit goods and have them seized, and also upset some of the crime syndicates of operating at the airports. Jackie Salebi took it upon himself to have me dismissed from that position after I exposed the corrupt award of a 300 million rand contract to a security company which has now gone bust. Its owner went to prison, called Kusalami Security. And Jackie Salebi decided to have a go at me. In fact, he also threatened me with defamation. Didn't get anywhere. He got 15 years in prison. But after I got fired from AXA, unlawfully fired from AXA, I decided, okay, well, I've got nothing else to do. I've got my property business, which brings in a little bit of cash. I'm going to turn my sleeves up and focus on these criminals, and that's what I did. Now, Richard Mdluli made himself very, very busy when he was head of crime intelligence in Gauteng, arranging for cops to follow me around and to bring in people that I was interviewing to build my case against Jackie Salebi. And some of them were threatened. They were arrested by Mdluli, brought to his offices and threatened with prison if they didn't cooperate and stop talking to me.
Paul O'Sullivan, thank you so much for speaking to us. Forensic consultant on his reaction to Richard Mdluli and his co-accused receiving 5 years in prison, a decision, of course, which they said they're going to take to the Supreme Court of Appeal.